G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with a video to talk about more fire protection, because thinking about fire protection is a bit like opening a packet of biscuits or a packet of chips. Once you start, it's very difficult to call a halt to the process. In my personal case, when the canopy suddenly dried out in response to the drought and dropped a whole lot of cured dry leaves onto the forest floor, I decided I had to get up off my backside and do something. And I figure the ideal beginning point is to start with the biggest gun and fix that. That being designed in World War II, built by Wormhole Brothers Proprietary Limited. This is the Simplex Firefighter, what they call an airport firefighter. It is designed for flat ground, and it's supposed to be particularly good at putting out a burning twin-engine wooden aeroplane, something about the size of an Avro Anson or an Airspeed Oxford. And this one, which I've relied on for point defence of the hut for about 25 years, had, through lack of maintenance, developed a leak in its massively oversized and heavy main shut-off control valve, which should be a mirror finish rather than the oxidized black or rusty coloured finish, which it has achieved. So anyway, this was leaking, so the hose was always under pressure, being contained by a brass cord, nylon barreled, infinitely variable firefighting nozzle, which itself eventually failed. And okay, that's now an historical relic. The only reason I can imagine why 16.5 megapascal bursting pressure hose had been fitted with a plastic nozzle onto a device that runs on 100 pounds per square inch maximum, which is the equivalent of about 700 kilopascals, meaning this hose was something like overbuilt by a factor of 50 for the load that it was ever going to be asked to cope with. Meanwhile, plastic nozzles can barely cope with 100 psi or 700 kPa. And it turns out that 19mm fire hose with a 1 megapascal water pressure rating, which makes it 130% of the load it'll ever have to carry, that stuff, 36 metres, about $127. And an all brass, infinitely variable firefighting nozzle, $99, and the fittings to go on with it. So this entire upgrade, including a new ball valve and a new nozzle, $48.60 for the ball valve. Nozzle, hose, clamp, nipple, nut and tail, $267 for that, plus the ball valve, $325. So now that thing's pumped up full of water, full of compressed air, 36 metres of hose, so I can take it out there to the fence, and for somewhere between 1.5 minutes you've got a 10.4 horsepower fire hose, or 2 minutes, you've got an 8 horsepower fire hose, but at the end of 161 litres of water, because there's 150 in the tank and there's 11 litres in the hose, at the end of that time, well, then you got a problem. Because although there's 3,000 litres of water there and another 2,000 litres of water here, so we've got 5,000 litres, it has to be carried in 16 trips up past the hut, put into the tank, a couple of fully charged 6 volt 225 amp hour deep cycle batteries full of solar power. They have to be picked up and carried over to the firefighter, connected to the Inflatable 90, vintage about 1976, which is capable, given a drop of oil onto its foam air cleaner approximately every 5 minutes, is capable of drawing 60 watts from the battery, 5 amps, and after 3.5 hours of supervised 12 volt solar powered exertions, then all that stored energy will be in the bubble, ready to go again. Which is all very well and good, fine and dandy if you're on your flat airfield and in the middle of the grass you've got a burnt out Avro Anson and you've had your 2 minutes of firefighting. But up here, you're sort of stuck with the issue that brave young cowboy firefighters, they reserve 33% of their water in the tank for personal protection, burn-over protection. Stop themselves from getting crispy critted. Your modern fire truck is rigged with spray bars and rails and nozzles all over the truck, connected to the pump, so you can sit inside the cabin and spray yourself with a ball of water. You only fight the fire with the top 2/3 of the tank. Old, experienced firefighters, they're only going to fight the fire with the top half the tank. They're going to keep half the tank for burn-over protection. So this thing with 161 litres, yeah, you're looking at 1 minute worth of firefighting and then hang on to the last 75 litres of water for burn-over protection, 80 litres. It's not much good, really. 25 years ago, when I didn't know any better, it made me feel less frightened. And of course, 25 years ago, when I bought it, I only had 400 litres of water, maximum, in a couple of 44-gallon drums. Clearly, what's necessary to have any sort of a chance of defending this clearing is a way of taking that 5,000 litres of water and putting it out all over the clearing, maybe in 1,000 or 2,000 litres all over the place, just to wet it all down and then have 3,000 litres with which to fight the fire from wherever it's approaching. And then when all else fails, that's when you start thinking about 10 horsepower for 1.5 minutes worth of burn-over protection when the fireball arrives, if it should happen to do so. Now, those of you familiar with this channel may recall when this was full of empty beer bottles, and there's not so many beer bottles in there anymore because in my old age I've started drinking a bit less beer, which means that I've got a bit more money in my backpack, in my wallet, in my bank account kind of thing. And then because I was making 1.6 times the minimum repayment on the car loan, it turns out that I finished paying the car loan off a couple of months ago. So between not spending as much on beer, no longer being in hock to the usurious moneylenders, I was able to seriously entertain the concept that a water pump in the forest is actually a lot more useful than money in the bank. That was the reasoning that caused me to buy 36 metres of new hose for the Firefighter. So therefore, while I resisted the urge to lash out and spend $1,250 on a purpose-designed actual firefighting pump with a 6 horsepower engine and 2 hose outlets, I could not resist spending I call it $330 on a pump that's capable of putting out 300 litres per minute and which is capable of delivering about 36 pounds per square inch, or 250 kPa. And of course, when you acquire such a thing, then you need a suction hose and you need a hose to take the output. So a hose kit was $125 for 6 metres of suction hose and 14.5 metres of 25mm lay flat, which gets us to here. Okay, well, it would also get me pretty much to just the other side of the hut. And I didn't think that was really enough, you know, kind of sort of thing. So, with fittings to join on another 25 metres, and put the plastic firefighting nozzle, which came with the hose kit and which is very, very similar to the nozzle that I spent 3 days repairing before I decided to go and buy a brass one. So, okay, I can't actually get to my front gate, but I can see it and I can probably hit it with a jet of water. So somebody's possibly going to ask the question, why such low-grade el-cheapo hose? Well, that would be because, oopsie, this has only got to last until Tuesday. Today's Thursday. As from Tuesday, this 39 metre long setup will become the spare hose to be replaced by 36 metres of 25mm black firefighting hose, just like this stuff, only larger in diameter, thus to have less internal friction to cope with the fact that whereas this runs at 100 psi, so 25 metres of lay flat, $77.50. Add in the nut, the tail, the hose, the tail, the clamp, $96.36. An extra $96. Okay, yep. And there's another $350 bill in the way, or in the pipeline for Tuesday. And bear in mind, you have to fill the pump with water to prime it, just like you have to fill the tank with fuel. You have to put oil in the crankcase too, all before you ever try to start these things. And, well, behold! It works, Kimosabi. It works. Not great, but better than nothing. And yeah, it can just about do that, as well as that, or that. I'm pretty pleased with that. A pump in the bush is a lot better than money in the bank. Okay. And now, all that remains to do is to hang up the hose in a figure-8 flake.